Okay. Let's go for the full effect. So let's just say you're in your Steam library and you just downloaded Integument. So you click on the name here and you say launch. Okay, so once it launches and then the music fades out, well, as the music is fading out, the main window will come up and you'll see my artist statement pop up. The idea is that because I'm treating this like um, an art piece, like you would see in an art gallery or a museum, this case, an illustration on a wall, you would have the artist statement somewhere nearby, usually like, maybe in a frame or on some mounted on foam core next to the piece, and it would explain a little bit about the artist, perhaps what mediums they work in, and then go on to say the name of the work and what the work means. It's just so that you can get an idea of the artist's intent, which is one way of engaging in art appreciation and critiquing art by knowing the artist's intent, because that goes into it. I mean, because you can look at an art piece and say, oh, okay, this sucks or whatever like that, but if you wanted to know how that related to the artist, which would make sense, and wanted to know if it what made it a successful piece, it would help to know their intent. And if they had a certain intent, and then once they completed the piece, if they were able to achieve that, that's one of the ways you could say whether or not it's a successful piece. If the artist ended up getting what they set out to do. In my case, um, it's this is the piece, of course, and this is the artist statement. This goes a little bit deeper because it kind of talks about me in general, not just about this piece, but my approach to uh, a little bit of everything. Everything that I am goes into the art that I make. So, from my perspective, I'm talking about everything that I've known since I was conscious of the idea of creating art, and doing it with intent. That that's what went into it. So it's kind of like it's almost like I'm trying to write my biography in a paragraph. What does it mean? What does this all mean to me? And put those into words, and in this case, you have to be really to the point with it, and then move on to the piece, because really it's the piece. What is this thing? What does it mean? So that's how that works. You can close it or move it around or leave it open. It doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna leave it open for now. Actually, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna minimize Steam, because we don't need it open right now. Just so it'll be less distracting. I'm gonna put that over the desktop icons that I have and just move this to the middle. Okay. Okay, so we have the main screen turn on. So this is the main piece. This is the illustration. And what it is an image of these microscopic organisms that are living on the surface of in this case, it's a skin sample. And this is what the microscope picked up when when the researcher looked in a specific area. So I guess the idea is like it's going through like these progressive views of it, and it's putting all of those images together and then reconstructing it, kind of like a photogrammetry, an advanced version of photogrammetry, putting all that together and then creating a 3D representation of what it saw. And while it's doing that, it's also coloring the images for the researchers. Um, in this case, in reality, when researchers look at, like say for example, with scanning electron microscopes or transmission electron microscopes, basically with electron microscopes, all that's in black and white, and they have to go into Photoshop after the fact and color those images. They call it false coloring because, well, it's not real. There's no color um, involved in the process of photographing these things. But in my case, and probably the case for in reality, a lot of these things are colorless. It's just usually the false coloring is to one, it makes it look more interesting, but more important, it allows the researchers to draw focus to a particular area they're looking at. So that's a lot of times why they do it, and then like the rest might be black and white, or they might just leave it black and white. But a lot of times, if they need to say, "Oh, hey, th- this is this structure," we'll let's go and color this and things like that. So that in itself can give somebody a chance to be like an artist. And there are techniques that you can use to make that easier in Photoshop when you're coloring microscopy, as they call it. So yeah, so this one it's actually based off interfaces from actual microscopes that have electronic components to them. So this is sort of a distilled version of what is in real life, but also putting in a few things that are kind of like projected a little bit um, to the science fiction level. Not necessarily futuristic, because this could be now, but say in an alternate universe on Earth, because this world does take place on Earth, but I'm not really specific about if it's our Earth. I just say Earth, so you might assume it's Earth. Um, but they are using quantum computers in this world, so it's a little bit more advanced than us. Um, but also, I didn't want to go crazy with the interface, because there's certain things that you figure would probably still be around anyway. Even like if you projected this like 20 years in the future, you still might see an interface like this. At least this part. This top level interface, I call this the hood, as in a almost like a car hood. So I use a little automotive term with it, and there's a reason for that, because beneath, where all of the processing is going on, the raw data processing, I call that the engine, and that is equivalent to sort of the command line of the operating system, the stuff where you're actually able to talk directly to the computer and type in commands and throw at it, which actually may not be that pretty, but it's more efficient than moving around and clicking with a mouse and things like that. So you have the basic controls, like for example, okay, there's something in this window, so you're sort of zoom out and then zoom in. And then this one would be like you would move it around. If, in this case, it doesn't let you do it, if there had been enough information to have a 3D view of this. That's why it doesn't work. So it's saying using yellow as the color, like caution, or not caution, but information in this case. So there is a color language to all of this. So usually green is letting you know it's information, but it's on, right? It's like this is active information. So it's active. And then yellow, of course, is informational. And a lot of times I might have blue be like if it's actually for labels and things like that. I kept it pretty monochromatic in a lot of these places because I wanted to focus on the main piece or pieces, as you'll see, the pieces, in this case, this. Um, I didn't want to have too many blinky things going on because I didn't want it to be annoying. I mean, there's times where I just let this thing go and see how I felt about it, like looking at it out of my peripheral vision and say, "Oh, is that annoying me?" So the only thing that you can see blinking right here is this thing, and this is like the right at the top. It says, and it's like a selection, but it says automatic spatial mapping. So basically, what it's doing, it's coalescing all the information and creating a reconstruction in this, a 3D reconstruction. That's all it is. It's just a fancy way of saying it's doing a reconstruction, but it's a spatial mapping. But in this case, what it's doing is the idea is this is doing a lot of stuff for the researchers so that they don't have to worry about it. I mean, they can go in and do it manually, but it's the idea of like, I just put this microscope, it's looking in this area, so and and for the settings, it's like, okay, obviously I want to look at what's in this area on this sample and automatically uh, um, make a 3D reconstruct it so I can look at it in 3D and also false color it. Yeah, just make it look pretty for me, so I don't have to do it. I just want to look at it. So that's what that's for. There's things about the level of resolution you're dealing with and things like that. Some of the buttons they kind of respond to what you're doing. So when you hover over it, it'll change color. I just went simple, like so it's default this gray color, and then when you go over it, it turns dark. So it just says auto tracking. So the idea is it's keeping track. It's like you're selected an area, you find something interesting, and now you're gonna sort of stabilize your subject in that you're going to make it so that it's tracks where your subject is, so it keeps them in the frame, so because you're interested in looking in that area, so that's kind of like what that's for. um, this is written some of this is written in Japanese, but the idea is I'm using iconography, so it's kind of like even if you didn't know what it was, either by clicking on it, you would end up seeing, oh, it says something auto tracking, so it basically says the equivalent in Japanese. And then uh, some people, it depends on the person looking at it. Somebody might say, oh, that probably means that. And then below, um, there's this information um, relating to the microscope and its functions, like the microscope, the power that it's using, um, the the resolution of the image that's being seen, like the DPI and the resolution, the megapixels, blah 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 blah. There's a little timer. That's sort of in real time. That can actually give you an idea of how much time has elapsed. In this case, 13 minutes. God, I've been talking about 13 minutes. Um, Whatever. That's just to make it look a little interesting. Although they do have things like that on there. Um, this is sort of a scan. Start a scan. Initiate a scan. Um, that button that says something like to stop it. Again, if you can interact with it when it changes. So that if you try to stop it, it says cannot cancel deep scan. Please wait. So that is, it's doing a high resolution scan, and this is the output that it's gotten so far. A frame from what it's seeing. In this case, there's one, two. We can see three. These things are called metagagos. The darker color ones are called metagagos. And there's three metagagos. There's one coming off this bacterium, and there's three blorduses. There's one in the foreground, and it's running towards these other two who are running away from the metagago. The metagago are trying to eat them. And then you have some other little details. These are sodium pools. You can kind of see into them, reflections, things like that. You can see the reflections in here. There's all kinds of little details. So this is just more for, hey, check out the illustration and the details. You can kind of see structures underneath the surface of their bodies as well, because they're kind of translucent in places and things like that. There's light passing through parts. These structures that allow them to interpret their environment, you can kind of see through them and then see off in the distance and things like that. And they're each one of these Blorduses, these are different colors actually. They're slightly different. Even the Metagagos, they're also the structures that allow them to see their environment are also different color as well. If you look, you don't have to look that close, so you can kind of tell because one looks sort of transparent. It's sort of amber color, and this one is blue, and things like that. They actually are not eyes. They kind of look like them, but they're not. Like the Metagagos use something that is almost like an electron gun. It fires electrons, scattered electrons that when they bounce against what it's pointing at, they'll come back and then it'll be able to detect that. It'll be able to create an image map of its surroundings. Kind of like the idea of like, those movies where you'd have like the invisible guy and you throw powder on them and then you can kind of see their outline. So it's kind of like they paint the area with electrons and then, kind of like electron echolocation. No. Yeah, so which doesn't make sense. But yeah, anyway, Doppler. No. This one is sort of like it kind of saves it. It says project saved. And then these are file formats. There's one that in particular, the one people would be familiar with, a TIFF, maybe not a BMP, but that is another a real file format. TIFF is a real file format. BMP is another file format. And then I have one that I made up called a 3DIF. It stands for I was doing sort of like inspired by a TIFF file. I think TIFF stands for, is it Targa Interchange File Format or something like that? Something like that. But this one is a 3DIF, so it's sort of a 3D interchange format. So I'm suggesting that, it won't be a big deal to have 3D photos and you'd have some generic format for these 3D photos. So you'd have, it's not a big deal. So when you look, so basically you'd be able to look at the image and it would be in 3D and you wouldn't need glasses or whatever special glasses or anything like that. It's sort of built into the tech that you're looking at. And then the 3D interchange format would just be, kind of like a JPEG. It's just like, oh yeah. So it's your or a PDF ubiquitous sort of file format. Even though at this point PDFs are still Adobe made those, but yeah, but it's sort of like a right up there with like it's your generic file format. That's, or at least one you could say is used by a lot of people in this one. So at the bottom it says it's sort of a import, but it tells you there's an error. It says import error, node offline. And beneath it says node input error in Japanese. Or node offline. It says node, or no, actually it says node offline. And then it says quantum node Cirrus System 47. System 47 is a very specific Easter egg having to do with Star Trek Next Generation. Look that up. It's sort of like, if you know what it is, fine. If you don't, it's fine. Whatever. Basically, it's some technical stuff. Yeah. Can't do it. And then right now, because I have the DLC downloaded to this, it says database online, and it's the Gates database. If it wasn't there, you wouldn't. It would say if you weren't clicking on any of these buttons, it would just say no signal. But once you download the database, it actually will show up here. And it'll pretty much show up instantly. You won't have to restart the Integument application, which is cool. And that has to do partially with me and also with Steam. One cool thing about Steam is, I guess, from what I could see, as you're downloading any kind of application, game, whatever, it has it in a temporary location. So it doesn't put it where it actually needs to be until after it's finished downloading until the download is complete. Then it'll put it there, which works well for me because it's not like if you were impatient and it was downloading it, and even though it's a partial file, it would show up here and you would click on it and it wouldn't work. That's not going to happen, which is cool. So that's the cool thing about that. That allowed me to do something programmatically where that's a good thing, because once it's finished, then my code can say, oh, okay, do your thing, indicate to the user that it's there, and then allow them to click on you, because if it's not there, oh, actually, you know what? I'll just show what it looks like. I'm gonna have to go into my files. So we're gonna go to Steam, and then I'm just gonna go to properties, local files, browse, and then I'm gonna see if I can do it without. Hold on. I'm just gonna hide one file, and then hopefully I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna hide the file. So okay, so we're gonna move this over here, and then we're gonna be looking right there, right? So hopefully this, I'm just gonna make a folder, call it temp. Hopefully I don't mess something up. Actually, I haven't done this before. Not like this. Okay, so the DLC gates exe is right there. Hopefully. Yeah, there it is. This is database offline. So you wouldn't be able to click on it. So I'd be saying, well, I could just make a file, and then, okay, so hold on, let me put that back. So I'm putting it back in the folder. Boop, and see it turn back up. It turned back up. It's not like you could be like, oh, I could just make a file, call it that, and then I'll have access to the DLC. It's like, no, it's not like that. The DLC actually doesn't exist until you download it, so it's not. I don't have it embedded in the code or anything like that. So it's not like that. So somebody like, I could just make it think it's there. It's like, you could do that, but nothing's gonna happen. it's yeah, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't. You would actually. You know what? I need to look at my own crap. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. So actually, let's see what happens. Haxering my own stuff. Oh, hold on. Not manage. Sorry. Local files. Yeah, I want to see what happens. I don't think anything's going to happen. But you know what? Let's see. This is good stuff. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so here we're gonna make another folder. We're gonna call it temp again. I'm just calling it temp. I'm moving. Hold on, I'm making that so you can see it. I'm moving the file. There's actually two files, but this is the main one. Okay. So I'm going to make a file that I'm just going to make a text document. And I'm going to call it, oh, what's it called? Hold on. Okay, this is called DLC Gates. Okay, hold on, rename. I'm just copying the name. We're gonna call it DLC. We're gonna call this text file. We're gonna tell it it's an exe, even though it's not. It's a text file. Yeah, change it, change it. Okay, so we're calling it. Okay, so there it showed up again. Okay, so here we go. So if you're like, I just made a file and now it should work. It says error failed to launch program. Yes, of course. I just wanted to see if that was going to crash my app or something, but it doesn't. It just, yeah, it just says it can't find it. So it's not like, yeah, so it's not like, um, I didn't, yeah, like I said, the, the DLC is not like hidden in the code and like, if I unlock it, then I can, no, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. I was actually going to do that, but it was so much of a pain that it would have been so much of a pain that I was like, screw that. I was actually gonna do that. I guess that would have been bad because then it's like I could make a I could just say it's an exe or whatever and say it's that and then I've bypassed his crap and it's like okay, whatever. I mean, it's not like you couldn't um yeah, I mean there's stuff you could do to do other things, but it's like if you're interested in like getting this from the legit source, which is from the Steam store, it's like why would you get it from anywhere else? Which is the point, you know. Also, this main application's free. It's the DLC that you pay for, but then you're like, I'm too cheap to pay $5. I need to get it for free. Fine, okay. I mean, if a whole bunch of people are like, I wanted to use it for free too, bro. Could you hook me up? I'm like, sure, I could do that every now and then. I don't, whatever. My idea for this is that, and it's something I've been thinking about for years. When I invite people to art shows I was in, I've been in galleries and museums and stuff like that, and they'd be like, "Oh, but I don't know anything about art," and I was like, "What the you know what I mean? And I always hated that response because you have these elitist morons who are like, oh, okay, I have a degree in art history, okay, and you're just like, art is for everybody, okay? It's not this, and I'm there, I'm the artist, right? And I'm at these art receptions, and of course the snobs show up, and they're like, I think this represents this and that, blah blah, and I'm like, no, I just made it because it's cool. You know what I mean? It's like you're trying to read too much into my stuff, and you're gonna tell me what I'm about. I'm the artist. Oh, so I have other stories relating to that. Anyway, okay, so we're not going to do the database yet. Hold on, we're not going to do the database yet. So again, we're on the hood. Oh, also at the top, it says the name of the thing, and it also says like the version number of the nanosphere microscope interface. That's just sort of an in-world detail that I put in. So for the most part, I'm playing this straight as if this is real, like a real like like you don't see the microscope, but you see the interface for it. I actually have an idea of making an actual physical microscope that would work with this program, which would be cool. Like you would put in like specimens and then it would know and then you would start seeing the results of the specimens, the data would be processed, then you would see it here on the screen. That would be cool. I will totally fricking do that if this thing um, takes off because I have plans, you know what I mean? So there actually would be a physical component to this. Not required. It would just like just add a little bit more immersion to the thing because that's the idea. You're looking at the software for some hardware, but we don't see the hardware. And the idea I'm not gonna necessarily show the hardware here because the idea is like it's kind of like you are the user. In this case, you're logged in as me, or at least someone with my username called MEMATRON, one of the researchers. Anyway, So yeah, that's because I think that would be cool. It's been stuff like that's been done before. That stuff's been done before with various things, real and well, we're talking about fake stuff. Yeah, that's been done a lot, but it's cool. Why not bring a little bit of that back? Then you'd have some cool looking prop, futuristic looking prop on your desk, which would be cool. That I think that would be cool. Blink, some blinky lights and that thing and things like that. So this is the engine. So once you basically you just click up on the top anywhere on the colored solid part of the window. It's too big to move around as is. It can, but I purposely made it as big as this space I wanted it. I wanted it to be in. The idea is I wanted to maintain the presentation. You know what I mean? Kind of like, oh, this is the art, right? And so that's the reason for it. But once you minimize it, you can move it wherever you want. I usually just keep it up here because all the interesting stuff is usually wherever you're gonna. Um, I guess you could put it right here. I guess you put it right there because there's some artwork under here. So the idea is that I had to make each one of these, obviously. Well, if it wasn't obvious. There is, believe it or not, there's not a crap ton of repetition on here. Everything is slightly different. Even these things. There's little, but a lot of the stuff you'd have to zoom in at the pixel level because I actually made it at the pixel level, which this ended up turning into pixel art. Um, just just to just so that when you looked at it overall, like you don't notice each individual one, but overall you would get this sense, even if you're not consciously aware of it, that there is something. There's a tone that sweeps throughout it. Kind of like there's parts where I kind of treated it like a watercolor painting, where I kind of like doing the equivalent of a wash to bring everything together. But in my case, I did it with lines, with shapes and color to sort of bring us back around. Like this one, I mean, this is really a strong. Looks like a a paint swatch sample right here, but it's very strong, and it could be overpowering, but I think it works with this, and it sort of sweeps this way, right? So your eye goes here, and then you kind of stop here at this break because you have this black line. Then you end up maybe going down here, and then well, we ignore this, but you might go along the side and then go up here, and these things that's an L shape, which is also doing that, right? Um, but it's sort of like kind of, even though it's sort of a square shape, it still kind of takes you around in a circle. Because it's funny how like even in here, all the stuff here, it it kind of stops right before you get here, so it's sort of self-contained in a way, even though it's a rectangle. I hope that to me it does, but I'll let other people who use it be the judge of that. That's at least I could say that's what I was trying to do. Let's just say that whether or not I was successful with it, I'll let other people decide. No, you weren't, bro. My eyes going is it went off the screen, bro. I'm like, okay, okay. No, but that's the reason behind some of the color choices where I kept the background this sort of grayish brown color. I also wanted to keep it kind of clean, not white because that would have been too much on the eyes. Because I spent a lot of time looking at this and saying, okay, if you're looking at this for a long time, what's going to be maybe annoying or what's going to make your eyes go, "Wah, wah," because certain colors close together, they can create this weird, like chromatic aberration. You also get some visual color mixing, which I actually took advantage of visual color mixing on the database, the database gates, the DLC. I actually use that to my advantage. So basically, it's the idea when you have two colors come close together, you end up making a new color. And it's done kind of like the equivalent of doing an in camera special effect, but you're doing it with the human eye, and it's called visual color mixing. An example of that is if you look at Vincent van Gogh's paintings. Because he liked to use a lot of pointillism, where he's using, in his case, he's using like paint daubs, uh, dots of paint, and he's doing all these colors and he's creating shadow, value, and form. But many reasons why you see a lot of these colors is because, yes, he's putting a lot of colors on there, but he's also, those colors are almost like looking at the phosphor dots on an old television. Or if you looked at certain, computer monitors, you look up close, you see the dots that ended up being just the primary colors. It's just their arrangement. They come together um, and form a new color, but it's an illusion, which is pretty cool. So, and like for example, these dots right here, these aren't, they're not glowing. It's just color. That's all it is. So I didn't want to have a bunch of neon stuff going on. Um, there are some like sort of a day glow blue colors and things like that, but not like glow. There's no glow effects going on here, and that's on purpose. Although it sort of looks like it because some of the stuff might be sort of a neon color or just pure green, RGB green. But again, it's not like a glow. Not too much. I have a little bit like when you go across here, when you start going into the arc, this part right here kind of glows. It's very subtle, and it only does it on like say one, two, three. Yeah, it only does it on these three color bars, but you don't see it on here. It's just when you enter here, these kind of glow. So the idea of this is like a flip book. Like one of those books where you have a drawing on each different page, and as you turn it, then it gives the illusion of movement. When in fact, all you're doing is just looking at a series of pictures in sequence, and that's what this is. So each one of these buttons are colors. They're not. Well, I guess some of these are buttons. Each one of these is a picture, and as you go up, it there's a green color. I can say a light. It's not really a light, but it's a green color that turns on. It also ends up blinking. These are kind of like data access, kind of like disk lights. That was my idea, kind of like disk lights. So there's a lot of data storage on here. I actually call these things. You won't see it written down anywhere, but I call them memory cells. Some people paying attention might pick up on that. I'm not sure. They, although I just spoiled it, but whatever. Again, it's not revealed anywhere. I don't say. Although I would I would be interested maybe in making a sort of a almost like a service manual for this thing, for this computer, or for this software, for the software, like a fake manual for how it works in world and things like that. That might be kind of cool. So as you hover over that, this is why, like I said, it's like a motherboard. You get these, they're like uh, circuit paths and things like that. There is some iconography. On this one, it says QR code, and when it says QR code, you see a thumbnail picture of, in this case, my face. That's supposed to be like the user who's logged in. So if it was some other name, you would see another face or something, but it says QR code. So the idea is like I introduce it there, and then you're like, oh, there's another one. So if I click on it, then I see, well, a QR code. Click on that one, you see a QR code. That one you don't. But the difference between this one and this one is that there's no little icon of the user on that one. So that's why it doesn't do it, but it does light up. The idea is that each one of these is a picture, and they may or may not reveal information, and that's where the intrigue could come in. If you like figuring stuff out, kind of like a puzzles. It's a little puzzle because the idea is like, okay, this is actually a collection of illustrations. The code running underneath is written to show you the illustrations. Everything kind of goes to present this to you. There's visual patterns and things like that. There's little subtle things you might notice, like for example, these data stacks, how they move. Like that. That's totally not random. Nothing is random actually. Well, actually, one thing you find out programming doing math is you can't make random numbers. There's a now you might not know when something happens, but that actually is doesn't make it random. There's a pattern, but trust me, none of this stuff is random. These things are actually in sequence with other animations. Um, but there's so much happening that it would take you a while to figure out which ones they're synced with, because your eye has to travel from one area to another, and it's possible that as you're doing that you would have missed something. You know what I mean? But I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who can be like, hey, that data stack is perfectly sequenced with this blinky light over here, or that text that's being, yeah, because they are actually. I Off the top of my head, I forgot which ones. I'd actually like, have to look at my code and see, because I kind of forgot. Yeah, because there's a lot of that going on. So each one of these, you could say, okay, each one of these is actually an illustration in its own. And in that case, yes, there's hundreds of little spot illustrations, little thumbnail illustrations, and things like that. So, and sometimes when you click on them, things happen. Sometimes when you hover over them, things happen. Um, Although some of them you would end up figuring out just traveling over this thing. You'd be like, oh, hey, something happened when my mouse went over that. Um, like these are buttons, but they don't glow when you hover over them. They just change shape. Because let me try something different. The idea of this is I didn't show the language, but actually a long time ago made up a language for these quantum computers, and I did a play on the word Unix. I called it Quantrix, just sort of a quantum state, computer language, something like that. And I just call it Quantrix, um, where it actually uses these symbols that could basically, one of these glyphs could represent trillions of lines of code. So the idea is, if you have these glyphs put together in a certain sequence, it's almost like there's power in a name, kind of like that. They're almost like runes, but it's for quantum computers. It's a language for quantum computers, because there is so much spooky action at a distance going on, that these things need a special language so that they can do what they need to do. You know what I mean? So, and they're able to store so much information, so much more than a classical computer, that they need their own operating systems and language to accommodate what they're capable of doing. That's also reflected in how this looks. This is something that sort of reconfigures itself every now and then, and the way it looks, it's almost like um, a circulatory system that is configured to the needs of the system. So the way this works underneath is sort of more like, this is what this system needs in order to do what it needs to do at the time, although it can change. So it's not really necessarily to your benefit. I mean, it benefits you, but how it looks, it's more like, oh, the computer's like, oh, I need to do this in order to, this will make me more efficient to do that. for what I'm working on right now. Maybe in the future I'll change, but for right now, this is, you know, Occam's razor action going on here, and I'm going to do this. So right here it's just saying, oh, I am processing data on this Metagago. You know, I noticed a Metagago. Here he is. This he's doing some stuff, and here he is again. Here's a Metagago kind of running. So it actually has captured some movement, and it's going to, you know, eventually create a 3D representation of that Metagago, and it's going to be colored, and it's going to look all pretty, and then it's going to go through and identify, um, you know, different parts of its body so that, you know, a lot of that might be based on what the scientists have named things. So the idea is like the scientists will say, oh, here's this creature. Oh, we're going to call it this. We're gonna identify. We're gonna call its you know, its species this, and that goes into all their lab notes and blah blah blah. And the computers have access to that. So when the computer says, "Oh, this thing has something that looks like, you know, what's equivalent to an eye, and it has all the traits of what this scientist called it, so I'm going to label this part as something that the researchers are familiar with." You know what I mean? Because we are, yeah, it's kind of like it takes the existing data and then it says then it uses it for that. But if it discovers something new, then it'll say, okay, hey, I found something new. Do you want to give this a name? Maybe it has some suggestions or whatever of that, or based on all your research, um, you know, all your prefixes and suffixes and things like that. It's maybe it's called this unless the guys want to. So there's a lot of stuff that's like automatic, but then the researchers are free to do their own thing. And then there's a lot of gene sequencing action going on to where so it can help identify it, because it might be like, hey, this thing looks like this, but it's actually a relative of this other creature. You know what I mean? So they can maybe identify it by its gene map, by its genome, that is, and blah blah blah. So that's why there's a crap ton of that going on in here, which you can see more actually in. We'll open that up in the database. So we just open this up. Same intro music. When it's loading, it makes it look like it's accessing a computer network, but it's not. It's not actually accessing. We, personally, I don't like it if you're using software and there's no reason for you to connect to the internet using it. So that's why I didn't do that. This doesn't connect to the internet. If there's anything going on, that would be Steam. Even there's some of the stuff that they did with the DRM, that I was like, that's you guys, that's not me. You know what I mean? Like there's things that they've done that made the entire download bigger, um, and other things that may or may not look a certain way. And I'm like, oh, that's you guys, not me. Because they emailed me something that they're like, oh, you might want to be aware of this. And I was like, that's them. But I can't call them up. I would rather call them up and say, hey, you know that thing you told me about? Yeah, that's you doing that. That has nothing to do with me. That's you guys. You think you guys anyway. Okay, so anyway, here's the database. Gates. So this adds. So the idea of this is, I'm gonna. Well, okay, I'll leave that open. Okay, so I'm gonna move that to the side a little bit. So the idea of this, the first one, right, is that besides this, which looks pretty, there's not much going on. I mean, there's stuff going on underneath here, but and there are some pictures here, you know, stuff like that, right? But this is the centerpiece, right? This is like, okay, that's pretty, and it's all colored and rendered and stuff like that. This one also has nice, you know, it's rendered, it's, you know, blah blah blah, looks cool. But one thing that the database has over this is that it's sort of a more, not sort of, it's a more detailed analysis of um, these creatures, but using a particular one as a reference model. Because I can't show every, well, I can show everything, but the idea, I wanted this to, in a way, like physically look different than the main application. That's why I actually made it. I think it's actually, so yeah, it's actually half, literally like half the size. Let's see, the middle's kind of like right there, where that thing is right there. It's, we gotta go right there. Okay, actually, it's more than half now. I thought it was half. Oh, hell no. Okay, but that shadow thingy right there. Okay, I made it. Okay, yeah, it's actually more than half because it's this part right here. But okay, but let's just say for all intents and purposes, even though it's bigger, it's half of this. It's half of the main one. To say, okay, this is definitely different, but it's very dense in information. Very, very dense. There, and it's a little bit, like I say, it's more focused, but it's also more refined than the other one. Like everything's in color. I don't think I have any. No, I don't have any black and white. That's why, because the idea is like I wanted to visually show that that's why this is different because it's in black and white, right? This hasn't been false colored. None of these have been false colored. Um, this is colored, the interface stuff, but the images, except for, well, you got these, but I really count, in my mind, I count this main guy, and then the stuff. Well, you have this too, but like this one, right? Like this animation is powered by you. So in this one, if we looked at one of the characters, so we have these buttons on the bottom that react when you go over them. This is one of them. Loading data, scan data. Now this one we actually have it's like false colored. This is gates. So we have some little animations. I purposely didn't put in a lot of animations because I'm saying, it's an illustration, right? I didn't want to go buck wild with it and stuff like that. I wanted people to appreciate that, hey, this is an illustration. And like even if you took a still of this and you're like, okay, I'm looking at this, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. But I wanted to make it look interesting. So right here we have some genomic mapping going on. Those colors are significant. They represent the base pairs. That they're the base pairs that are in RNA and DNA, and those things are what make up, as people call it, the double helix, because it's a double helix. This DNA, they make up what makes up DNA. Like if you split this right down the middle, you would have these guys here and these guys here, and so they kind of connect in the middle. It's almost like a zipper. And when they connect in the middle, they start forming this double helix. So depending on their how they're arranged, you get different things happening. So of course, this is like our programming, right? And their programming. It decides many things: what they look like, their species, you know, their diet. There's lots of things, right? Yeah, I mean, you can get into the old nature versus nurture thing, but at least, just to be a little bit reductive here, we could say, okay, we can at least all agree on the genetics determine if you're an animal or a plant, right? What kingdom you belong to. It's like, So yeah, at least we can understand it from that level. Like, okay, you're a fish, or you're a plant. So stuff like that. What you look like, all that nice stuff. So in this case, since these guys have their own DNA, actually these guys are in their own separate kingdom. There's some parts of them, traits of them, of all of them, the Hada kingdom. So you'd have the plants, you'd have the animal, you'd have the proteus, then you have the archaea, and then you have the Hada. These guys are sort of they contain traits of like almost like viruses, bacteria, animals, and plants. They're sort of like, what? And they're multicellular organisms that are like, I think at the smallest you might get one that's like 9 nanometers. But even at 10 or 12 nanometers, a multicellular organism in real life, I don't think, as far as we know, nothing like that's on Earth. But who knows? I don't know. But I mean, we haven't seen anything like that. But you also can't necessarily say no, that doesn't exist. But then again, as far as what we go, is like things don't start getting more complex the smaller they get, because after a while you're gonna get so small you're gonna start going into the subatomic. So it's kind of like you can only get so big and you can only get so small. But a lot of that might be based on our technology. These things are So and with my technobabble, I basically had to make up a new species. I mean, not species, a kingdom. And then within that kingdom, I have the, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and I still have all that crap, but we start off with a new kingdom, and then I just plop these guys in there. Technobabble, technobabble, technobabble. So we have all this stuff going on. Various there are color cues and shapes and changes that happen when you go over things. I think mostly, yeah. A little color. So this is meant to sort of look very, very compact, but packed with stuff. So, oh wait, I can play my. Oh yeah. So I made all this music, so it's okay. No copyright strike. One of my friends said that scared him when he started it. I'm like, I suppose so. So we have the music playing. Information about this is on the store page for the DLC on why there's music in this. It has to do with how the quantum computers store information. So that doesn't have to be clicked on. When you go over it, it says the number 4. What could that mean? We have that. We have that. So this is just to, appreciate the art. I mean, I made all this stuff from scratch, so it's not like, oh, I'm using a whole bunch of, clip art or something like that. It's like all this stuff. Even my code. Oh, trust me, I wanted to like be like, oh, did someone already make some code to do what I need to do? Oh, I looked. There was nothing that anyone was doing that I could have just used straight. I had to make everything, so it was not. I wouldn't say difficult. It was just a lot of work. I'll put it that way. Yeah, yeah. I could never use anything that was standard because it didn't work for what I was trying to do. Not that I think it's crazy complex, but I did do some. I did do some clever things with it that only a nerd would understand. But whatever, or no one will ever see but me. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Whatever. Whatever. This is what's important. The visual. The visual. Ha ha ha. So that's Gates. We got these anatomical stuff. We have a glossary to show what all the techno babble means. So they're all labeled. This is talking about this other Durons. A little close up. We can close that. We can stop that. There's also, because you'll notice, like, there's also plus and minuses on here too. So that is like, hey, there's a plus and minus there. There's also one here. Does it mean the same thing? Like, okay. See, okay, my approach is I'm saying that you're not a moron, that you are intelligent, and you can figure this out. Even though you might not know what it is, you're a human. Humans are good at, figuring stuff out. And this is for the visual thinkers or learners, visual learners, like myself. I am. I mean, think about it. When I play a video game, this isn't a video game, but just using it as an example. Or actually, software in general, any kind of stuff. I don't read the manual. I just use it. And if I get stuck, I can't figure it out. I usually can figure it out. Then I'll read a manual. I normally don't use the manual. I still won't use the manual. Then I'll ask somebody. Um, I think that's why, like if I want to learn how to use something, a lot of times I'll just watch a video because it'll be faster than reading something. I need to see it. I don't like, it's kind of boring. So that's the only reason. So this sort of caters to that way of thinking because, like I said, I'm that way. I don't like reading a whole bunch of crap. I'm like, dude, just show me, okay? And because once you show me, I'm gonna have that down. There is more, but we're just gonna save that for. It'll be a secret. It'll be a secret. There's all kinds of hidden items. That's the thing about it. I can keep adding hidden things and activate things. I mean, it is done, but I left it open so that I could keep adding more stuff to it to each one of these. So it's not like so I'm gonna close that. So this isn't the end of it. It's not like, oh, well, this is as good as it can get. It's like, no, no, no. And it's not like I'm not happy with it. It's just I have I some stuff doesn't even occur to me, and I have ideas after the fact. Like um, the DLC, I hadn't planned on that. I came up with the idea after I finished this. I was like, oh, and then there was things that because I did this, I had ideas for that, and I put it in there. So it's not like I was holding back because I wasn't. It's just that some things didn't even occur to me, or some things didn't even exist until after I did this. Um, and the idea is like, hey, let me make that different than this, and like visibly different than it. So that was the goal there. That's why you have a lot of the blacks and so that the colors pop and things like that. So you could say, okay, that's definitely different than this. And of course there's different things going on, so it's not the same thing. So yeah, I have plans. I have plans for both of these, and then beyond. Yeah, yeah. So it's like I said, it's made to be fun. It's made to be fun. Um, oh. Also, I forgot. Yeah, these QR codes contain a lot of text information on purpose. Because one thing I found out, if I put a whole bunch of text in here, it looks, I don't know, it just kind of, I mean, like paragraphs of text. It doesn't look right. That's why I kept it visual, very visual oriented. Um, I don't. Yeah, I mean, this is okay, but I'm talking about not labels like this. I'm talking about like blah blah. Explaining how it works. It kind of. That's why I actually have a personal log entry in here that explains about this that you can play right there. Um, if people really like those, I can add more of those or something like that. I mean, actually, if people are like, "Oh yes, I totally want the detailed, freaking novel size, detailed technical explanation on how this thing works," I'm like, I can totally do that because that stuff's already actually I actually had to write all that crap so that when I did this, it was like I was treating it like it was real. That's how I start off. I actually write a freaking novel and then start doing it like, because I like to treat it like it's real and then it's natural. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Which also means that sometimes I have to look up my own stuff because, if you're going to make a world, right, you're going to have all this techno babble and then, but the thing about it, you can make up all the techno babble and then you can basically kind of like write a Bible for it, and that way your technobabble is consistent. So it's not like I'm not in the position where I'm making this up as I go along. I already made it up, and it's written, and I know what what this thing does and that thing does. There's a name for that thing. I mean, every now and then I might change a name because I'm like, oh, this sounds cooler than that. But for the most part, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, all the this thing does this because of that. These things see this and they do that, and because that also went into making it. I was like, well, why, yeah, like what are these? Is that it? Oh yeah. So what are these things on its? Can I pause? Wait, let's see. I think I can pause one of these. Can I pause one? Yeah. Like what are these things? What are these? What do they do? These are called these things are actually called sepenzars. Uh, it's actually how it takes in nutrients. But these things are sort of curved up, kind of like horns. So not only does it take in nutrients through that, it also uses it to eviscerate its prey. Yes. So, and in this case, yeah, there's other stuff to it. I don't think I haven't diagrammed these things yet, or at least not officially. I mean, I haven't shown anybody this. These would be fun. These are fun. These guys are cool. There's a crap ton of detail on them that I put in. They're actually, yeah, one of my favorite ones. It's because it's funny. They kind of look kind of cute up close, like right there, but they're actually, yeah, they look kind of pleasant. But these things, if they were your size, like you would not want to be near one of this thing would kill you. It'd be like lunch. They're not. They might be cute, but you do not want to meet them. Oh, even though they're microscopic, but I mean, if you're able to shrink down to their level, or you scale these things up, I wonder how big they would be. Say they'd be the size of a. I wonder how big. I wonder how. I don't know. I guess that would be whatever, a dog or a lion or something like that. Would they be 6 feet tall? I have no idea. Anyway, yeah, yeah. So anyway, oh, they're fast runners too. They're very fast. Um, Yeah, so that's it for now. Again, this is free, Integument is free. And the idea is it's basically art appreciation, just sort of have fun and let your imagination soar. That's the whole point of it. And imagine, hey, maybe it means that. Maybe you're right. Because I've had people like say stuff about this, and I was like, whoa, you got that from here? Jesus. Like, it's stuff that I actually wrote into the lore that they got. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even explain it to them. And I was like, Jesus, like, I was like, whoa, awesome. I'm like, I hope everyone's just like you. That's awesome. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I know there's a certain type of person that loves this kind of crap, and this is for you. Oh, yes. Anyway, that's it for now. Matane. Bye bye.